This video was brought to you by Stormberg, a better route planner, MisterGreen, Kempower and Marcus Bil. Yo, what's up? We are now in front of my house and here you see a Mercedes EQB. And in this video, I'm going to talk about something slightly different than usual, which is fossil design and fossil mindset versus pure electric mindset. So, yeah, you see here, this is the poor man's Merc. It has massive panel gap. Look at the hood here. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, it's just I want to show you guys that. You see, there's the safety thing there. There, you see, it's an electric car, but it's based on a fossil platform. So this is the way for many legacy automakers to get an electric car out in the market, because designing a car from ground up to be electric takes some time. Even Tesla needed to go through that. You remember a Roadster that was based on the Lotus Elise. That was the first electric car that Tesla made, and then eventually they moved to a proper platform. But here you see that the way fossil cars have been made for 100 years is that they just have a big ass engine in here, gearbox. They put everything in the front, and that's the way at least Mercedes is doing it. And also many legacy automakers, they have everything in the front because that's always how they've been doing it. And is it always a good thing? It has some disadvantages, space-wise, performance-wise, lots of other stuff. It has some disadvantages designing an EV just like a fossil. So I will try to talk a little bit around it, but now you guys have seen, you see this, if they packed it better, they could have at least had a frunk, or they could have made the nose shorter. There is just so much dead space here. But okay, let's just close this one, get inside, because it's getting, oh, Mercedes-Benz, oh yeah. It's getting cold, but let's get inside. I'm going to show you some more stuff here. Okay, I'm going to show you, by the way. But man, I just washed this yesterday. It's full of schmutz already. Scheisse. Yeah, you see here, traditional design. That's fine. Okay, but here, okay, look at this. Vehicle is operational. Switch off ignition before exiting. This is again old design. It's based on fossil platform, because ignition, that's something you have in fossil car, because you need to ignite something to burn oil. You have to burn raw oil in order for the fossil car to... What? Dude, freaking Mercedes keeps doing this. And also, why do we even have a start-stop button? Right? You can ask yourself, why do we need a start-stop button? If you enter the car, just like a Tesla, you should just be able to put it in drive and then off you go. And then when you stop the car, I'm going to show you something. If you do something like this, see the screen is on, screen is on, screen is on, all right? But if you lock it, the car switches off and locks, and it turns off the engine. No, I'm just kidding. But you see, it already, I mean, you don't have to use the stop button, at least. But for some reason, you have to use a start button. You can't just do this. You have to start the car. Why is it like this? Why can't they design cars just to be like Tesla? Because Tesla is the way to go. Because they design good EVs the way it should be. And also, let me continue my rant. Here. Okay. Kilowatt hour per 100 kilometer. Why is it like that? I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to show you something else here. Because it needs deeper explanation. I have so much stuff to talk. Okay, here. Kilowatt hour per hour. Why is it like that? Why do we need to have kilowatt hour per hour? Because some people say, no, it's an average over... No, it's not. Trust me, okay? If I do something like this, let me see, let me just crank up. I need to crank up the heat a little bit. Or actually, maybe even better, if I navigate to a fast charger, for example, then it should preheat. Okay, I navigated to a fast charger nearby. Let me see, it should, see. If this was an average over the last half an hour or 1 hour, it wouldn't fluctuate like this. This is not average. It's actually actual its actual power the car is pulling at this moment. So this is algebra failure. It should not be like this. So let me explain deeper behind all these things. So yeah, we all agree that having a pure EV platform gives you great benefits. I mean, do I need to explain about that? You then get more space, you get better performance, and also if you have a pure EV platform, you can then make it a rear-wheel drive instead of a front-wheel drive, unless you have all-wheel drive. But actually, front-wheel drive EVs, they have some compromises. In my opinion, they should be rear-wheel drive, like MEB platform, like Tesla. But I guess I should cover that in a separate episode because it needs deeper explanation, what is behind it. But you see, so we all agree that for the best EV, you want to have an EV platform designed as an EV from ground up. Well, if that is the case, why do we still see something like you guys saw now? And also in the BMW, you even have an auxiliary heater button in the BMW i3. That is again based on all fossil mindset, because yes, I used to have an auxiliary heater in my my BMW E61 diesel, but again, having that auxiliary heater button in an electric car, pure electric car like an i3 is incorrect. They should call it keep climate on or preheating or something instead of an auxiliary heater, because by definition it's not an auxiliary heater anymore. And then for Fat e-tron, and a fun fact, maybe they removed this feature already, but in the Fat e-tron you could then search for the cheapest fuel among many gas stations. Why do you even need that feature in a pure EV? Well, it's because they just took the software from some other fossil Audi and they put it in the Fat e-tron, and they forgot to remove that feature. Well, maybe it's very useful if you have a thirsty lawnmower or boat or something you want to fill up. What else did I find out there? But you see, okay, so again, let me explain then. What is the whole problem with kilowatt hour per 100 kilometer? If you think about this, the 100 kilometer as a unit, it doesn't exist anywhere in this world except for in a car. And I think the reason behind it is that for fossil cars, if you have a car that consumes 6 liters per 100 kilometer, you usually omit some decimals, because if you would express it per kilometer, you have to say something like 0.06 liters per kilometer. And then you have a very small number. So humans in general, they don't want to have too many fractions when you just have a bunch of zeros. For example, when you measure alcohol level in your blood, we will say it in promille, which is the percentile, right? 0.1%. And then you don't get too many fractions. And the same thing, in my opinion, is why they invented per 100 kilometer, because otherwise they will have too many fractions. And then the whole people just got to know this. But actually, it's not always like this everywhere, because in Norway, we actually don't use that unit per 100 kilometer. In here, we have something called mil. Just to make things even more complicated, mil in Norway is not mile. Mil in 1 mil is 10 kilometer. And in Norway, we say halvliter mila, which is half a liter per mil per 10 kilometer. That's the way we say it here. But you see, but at least from across the whole car industry, they use the per 100 kilometer to avoid too small numbers. They still have fractions though, so they kind of fail on that one already. But think about this. When you want to measure something small, like down here, you use centimeters, right, or inches. If you want to measure something bigger, let's say in a house or something, you use meter. If you want to measure distance between cities, or typically distance that a car can cover, you will not use meter, well, except for maybe navigation. But then you have 100 meters, but then you have to be very precise. But at least when it comes to distance to something far away, you will use kilometers. And so, but then why don't we use kilometers for consumption then? Right? So think about this. Try to find any place in this planet where we use per 100 kilometer as a unit. We don't. It's only in the consumption. But then, okay, it kind of makes it, I agree, it kind of makes sense to express it per 100 kilometer in a fossil car. But in an EV, it doesn't make any sense, because in an EV, we can already use watt-hour per kilometer, or we can use watt-hour, because people, you say, oh, but watt-hour, who the heck understands watt-hour? People understand watt-hour. When you want to travel, for example, they say that on the luggage you cannot bring, or in the check-in luggage you cannot bring more than 100 watt-hour in the battery. For example, when you buy tools, it will say how many watt-hour that the battery-driven tool has. We already understand watt-hour. We also understand what, when you have a light bulb, you might have, nowadays with LED, you might have 10 or 20 watt. You understand that one. For a phone, you know that this phone can charge at 20 watt. It's working fast, you know. So you already understand watt, and then watt-hour is just the energy variant of it. And then, so my claim is that people are not that stupid. They understand watt and watt-hour and kilowatt. When you have a hairdryer that has a 1,800 watt power, and then you have another hairdryer that is only 1,000 watt power, you understand what it means, that one is more powerful than the other one. And then the watt-hour is just the energy you use. So people already understand that. And then, so we might as well use kilometer as a unit, like Tesla is doing it. And then actually, like BMW has been doing it recently, they start using that one as default. So watt-hour per kilometer becomes the default. And the great bonus about it is that you can then avoid fraction. So we can say 150 watt-hour per kilometer. We don't have to say 15.0. Okay, if it wasn't like it, if I say the Tesla consume 125 watt-hour per kilometer, I don't have to say 12.5 kilowatt-hour per 100 kilometer. It's way more complex, way more. It's counterintuitive to use 100 kilometer as a unit. But then the argument is that yes, but if you have the kilowatt-hour per 100 kilometer, it's then easier to compare that to the fossil car that has liter per 100 kilometer. Well, first of all, why do you want to compare how much energy an EV is using versus a fossil car? And there is no similarity there. It pretty much ends with 100 kilometers. That's where the similarity ends, because in a fossil car, that unit we are measuring is volume. We are measuring how many liters it consumes per 100 kilometers. But then in an EV, we are measuring the energy the car consumes. It would make sense to use per 100 kilometer in EV if fossil cars would actually take in account what kind of fuel it uses, if it's gasoline or diesel, and you know how many kilowatt hour per liter it has. And then if the fossil car would display how many kilowatt hour per 100 kilometer the fossil car used, that would actually make sense. But then suddenly in fossil cars, it would start expressing it as, let's say, it would show something ridiculously high, like 65, 75, 85, or 90 kilowatt hour per 100 kilometer. Yeah, that would actually be funny if car manufacturers start displaying the energy instead of the volume, because then people start wondering, why the heck is the fossil car so inefficient? Well, it was always like that. Well, okay, so that is my 2 cents about the kilowatt hour per 100 kilometer. It should be watt hour per kilometer. It's way easier, way shorter to express it in the display also. I've seen some cars, they just squeeze in all that stuff. Like here, there's not even, in this car, there's not even, it's not correct, because you're supposed to have space between the number and the unit. And they just squeeze everything in there to have enough space. And then we have the kilowatt hour per hour discussion here. So you see, in a fossil car, when you are driving, of course the car would then display liter per 100 kilometers. But once you put the fossil car in park, it will switch over to display liters per hour. It makes perfect sense for a fossil car, since you're measuring the volume or the amount of fuel you're burning. But then for an EV, we can already express it in a better way, which is that we are already expressing it in the energy rather than the volume, because simply we can't measure energy in volume. I mean, for AV, can you? If we can measure how many AA batteries we are burning through per hour, or by a given distance, maybe that would make any sense, right? No, but we are not. We are just measuring the energy part directly. So then, when we are parking, we then get this kilowatt per hour, because again, like I tried to tell you guys for the last 10 minutes now, fossil car or legacy automakers, they take the shortest way, they take the shortcut, and they just use existing design and apply it to electric cars. And that's why it ended up being kilowatt per hour, because it was already liter per hour with fossil cars. So we just do it like this without further thinking. But it is incorrect to express it, to say kilowatt per hour. If you ever passed algebra class, you will know that your teacher will not accept this as the correct answer. And also, but then some people say, no, but it's an average. No, trust me, it's not an average. It jumps up and down. It just fluctuates because it actually shows you the current power it's drawing right now. Like I initially showed you, when I pull more power, it goes instantly up. If that was an hour, if that was an average over an hour, we will have to wait a whole hour until we saw the difference. We saw the average go up. So it was in fact an instant power draw right there. And then some people say, but it's easier for people to understand this. No, it's not really. You're really trying to dumb down people. People are not that stupid. They understand power. Like the example I used with the hairdryer. For example, if you would buy a heater, most adult people understand that if you buy a 2 kilowatt heater versus a 1 kilowatt heater, the 2 kilowatt heater will of course be more powerful. It will heat up the house better. It can cover a bigger room, for example. Everyone knows that. Just the same way as if this phone can charge, this Samsung phone can charge at 20 watts, it's freaking wonderful. Whereas the iPhone can only charge at 10 watts. Everyone knows that then the Samsung is charging faster than the iPhone, right? And the same thing goes over here. If you see that, oh, we are pulling 1.5 kilowatt, you don't have to dumb it down and say it's pulling 1.5 kilowatt hour per hour. It's just incorrect, and it's cringy to show it like that. It's based on fossil mindset. You should stop doing it. It's almost as silly as saying that, you know, if Millennium Falcon would exist in real life, and we have a spaceship that can travel that fast, we could say that, how fast can Millennium Falcon go? Well, Millennium Falcon can go 1 light year per year. That's the maximum speed. I was like, huh? 1 light year per year? Well, wait a minute. What is 1 light year? 1 light year is the distance the light travels in 1 year. Okay. But then what is the speed of light then? Well, you take that distance and you divide it by 1 year, and then you get the speed of light. But can you just say light speed, the speed of light? That's the maximum speed of Millennium Falcon. No, it's 1 light year per year. It's silly. We're dumbing down. We're making it overcomplicated. So the same thing goes for the kilowatt per hour. So again, my claim is that EVs, pure EVs, they need to be based on the EV platform. We have seen it with Tesla. Tesla has been kicking ass for a long time. We have seen it with the MEB platform, finally a pure EV platform. You have way more space. Like you basically have, for example, the ID.4 is a prime example. With the ID.4, okay, even the Audi Q4 e-tron, the Q4 e-tron is smaller than the fat e-tron. External wise it's smaller, but inside you have more or less the same space as a fat e-tron. But then the Q4 e-tron is more efficient than the fat e-tron, and it has a smaller battery than the fat e-tron, but it can go further than the fat e-tron. So that's the way to design it. Make a pure EV platform, and then you get lots of great benefits. Make an inefficient car or based on fossil platform. In general, I'm saying in general, you will then have a worse EV. It might be good as a car, but as an EV, it will perform worse. In general, okay, in general. There are some exceptions. For example, the iX3 is quite efficient despite being based on the fossil platform. This one, it's okay. I feel like I'm missing out on lots of space. I feel like I have about the same space as, actually less space than the Model Y in here. Yeah, just as an example. And again, but when it comes to software, like I talk about here, the kilowatt hour per 100 kilometer or the kilowatt hour per hour, it's not a big deal. Same with the auxiliary heat button, it's not a big deal. But at least for me, it's like cringe. And then if you have a start engine button also, don't get me started with the start engine button. I mean, why do we even need a freaking start button in a car, right? I mean, I understand for fossil cars. Fossil cars, again, are totally different because traditionally, in the old days, you have to spin it to start the whole car, the whole engine rolling, and then you can start rolling. But you know how fossil car works. But for EVs, it's just an electric motor. It doesn't need to spin anything until we start moving. So actually the whole start engine, per definition, engine is not an, it's called an electric motor. It's not called an electric engine. Some especially Germans, they will try to argue about it, but per definition in English, it's the engine needs to convert some kind of thermal heat or something into motion, whereas electric motor is not an engine. Okay, but we can have a long discussion about this engine thing, but even if it would say start motor, even start electromotor, even on the button, it will still be incorrect, because as long as you're stationary, if you start the motor, you will start spinning, unless you have a clutch in your EV. But most EVs, they don't have a clutch, so it's actually logically incorrect to call it start engine either way. Right? You understand me? You understand the words coming out of my mouth? So, so already that one is already incorrect. And then even, why do we even need a start button? Just implement it like NIO, implement it like Tesla or like Polestar. You enter the car, you push the brake, you put the car in gear, you go. And then you stop the car, you leave it, and then it shuts itself down. Many cars nowadays will actually do that. I mentioned Tesla, but I also forgot that also the MEB cars, you can also do that. You enter the car, you just twist it, and then you go. And then you don't have to power down. But for some reason, it has a power button, which again, in Sandy Munro's eyes, is bad, because you have to add that extra button. Someone needs to install it. It has some electronics. It adds extra cost, weight, complexity. There is no need to have that button, just like in a Tesla. But okay, that's a different story. I'm just talking a little bit outside of that. But the whole, another thing is that the start button needs to go. It's not needed for an EV, a pure EV. Just ask, I don't know, by now, I think we have over 1 million Teslas out on the road. Do they have a problem that they don't have a start-stop button in the Teslas? What about all those people with NIOs in China? And then what about well, more and more Polestar owners? Do they have a problem with the lack of power start-stop button? I don't think so. And then what about all the other stuff here about kilowatt hour per hour or the kilowatt hour per 100 kilometers? It's just logically, in my head, it just screams of unlogic implementation. That's it. It's not really gonna hurt you in any way or anything. It's just, in my opinion, it's kind of just weird implemented. Okay, so I think that's gonna be it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for watching, and talk to you later.